Spain has a complicated set of rules that define what this bottle is, which is a Brandy de Jerez. And while both cognac and Brandy de Jerez are brandy, when it comes to the details, they could not be more different. Hello and welcome to My Tiny Bottles, the project where I'm exploring my grandmother's legacy of miniature liquor bottles, one tiny bottle at a time. I'm your host, Tammy Coxon. So far, Tiny Bottle 35 wins the prize for packaging. It's in a cork box, which picked up some mold in its decades in storage. Inside the box, the bottle was wrapped in bright yellow cellophane. Beneath that was the bottle with its elaborate and ornate label. It's a tiny bottle of Cardenal Mendoza brandy from Sanchez Romate Hermanos in the Jerez region of Spain. Jerez is best known as the home of the famous fortified wine sherry, but 95% of all Spanish brandy also comes from there. Sanchez Romate was established as a winery in 1781 and remains one of just a few locally owned wineries in the region today. After over 100 years of making and selling sherry, the family began making a brandy just for family and friends in 1887. But everyone liked it so much they decided to bottle it, creating the Cardenal Mendoza brand. If you've been following My Tiny Bottles for a while, you'll know that I have talked about brandy a lot. There's been quite a bit of it in the collection so far. But just like the cognac region of France has its own set of rules about what distinguishes cognac, Spain has a complicated set of rules that define what this bottle is, which is a Brandy de Jerez. And while both cognac and Brandy de Jerez are brandy, when it comes to the details, they could not be more different. Key among those differences is that Brandy de Jerez, and also sherry, by the way, uses a soleras system for aging. In a soleras system, there are tiers of barrels. The bottommost tier is where the mature brandy, or wine, is bottled from. Key to the system, however, is only a third of the brandy in those barrels is bottled at any given time, and then the barrels are topped up from the tier above them, and those in turn are topped up from the barrels above them, and so on. When all the barrels have been replenished after bottling, new brandy is added to the topmost level. What this means is that every bottle contains a mix of older and younger brandy. To the extent an age statement is provided for brandies from a soleras system, it represents an average of sorts, rather than the typical rule of the age being the youngest brandy in the bottle. The soleras system Cardenal Mendoza uses has 8 tiers, with each tier containing approximately 400 barrels. Now, just to be clear, these are not literal tiers of barrels stacked on top of each other. Think of them as sets of barrels, all stored in a warehouse. The brandy is aged for 3 years before entering the system, and the average age of what ends up in the bottle is 15 years old. All barrels must have previously held sherry in them, which contributes a distinct flavor and sweetness to Spanish brandy. But the barrels are required to be at least 3 years old, so they're pretty neutral and they don't impart a lot of wood character to the spirit. Another thing that makes Spanish brandy distinct is the grape varieties that are used, which in Jerez is mostly a variety called Arain. Underneath the yellow cellophane, my tiny bottle has a tack strip, which made assigning an age range so much easier. Based on that, this bottle must be from between 1982 and 1985. Without that tack strip, though, this would have been a much harder bottle to date. The Cardenal Mendoza label has stayed remarkably consistent through the decades. The modern bottle looks nearly identical to this one. One of the purposes of having a soleras system is to ensure consistency, so I'm really curious how this brandy will taste compared to the modern version. I'm also really happy this bottle turned up when it did, because at the time I'm recording this, I am about to head off on a food tour of Jerez. So I'm going to bring this bottle with me, taste it in its homeland, come back next episode to see who my special guest ends up being and what we thought of it. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it, and I always love to hear from you. Drop a like or a comment while you're there. You can also find me at My Tiny Bottles on social media. And be sure to check out mytinybottles.com for the step-by-step pictures of this beauty being unwrapped for its photo shoot. Cheers!